Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, Two Blokes Chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
Hey, it's 9 minutes past 10 o'clock. We've had a bit of technology issues, but Rob has managed to pull it off, as it were.
I have indeed. We have a fantastic guest, a bloke that was on my front page show a little while ago. Saw him Tuesday launching a book called The Conquerors, 100 Greatest Sports People Connected to Geelong in History, and it is a deep, rich, talented group. We saw a lot of them live on Tuesday at the launch, and we're going to spend a little bit more time helping John Craven sell his book. John, good morning and welcome to The Pulse again.
Morning, Rob. Great morning to be in Geelong.
It is. It's always a good morning to be in Geelong. It's a great place. Your pride and connection to the town of Geelong was on show the other day. You've been very much connected to the town, and you went into bat for us way back when those horrible blokes in the newsroom at the Herald were hanging it on you about Sleepy Hollow and what a shocking place it is. But at one stage we had 3 of the 11 members of the Australian Test team come from Geelong, and that sort of sparked a bit of interest with you.
Well, it did. I was on the Geelong Advertiser at the time. As a cadet, I think I was the junior cadet in 1967 when Ian Redpath, Alan Connolly and Paul Sheehan, 3 of the 11 in the Test team against India in Adelaide in December 1967. And I wrote a story about it for the Geelong Advertiser, appeared on the back page. And here we are, 55 years later, at the Geelong Yacht Club on Tuesday. They launched The Conquerors, my book. So I was very privileged and very proud of that they came along. Paul Sheehan spoke beautifully, as you heard, Rob, and it was a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. John, it's Neil Butler here. When did the geographers inform the Australian selectors that Geelong wasn't in New South Wales and therefore no longer was anybody allowed to play in the Australian Test team? Or am I being a touch cynical?
Well, you've been talking to Ian Redpath. Redders has got this, it's almost an obsession that Australia in cricket's run by New South Wales, but
well, we've spoken to Redders before, and if he's nothing else, he is very, very clear on what is going on.
Yeah, but he was the elder. No, he wasn't the elder statesman. I think Alan Connolly might have got in the Test team before Redders, but I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, Paul Sheehan came in as a 21-year-old in that Adelaide Test and was quickly, I believe, earmarked by Sir Donald Bradman as a future Australian Test captain. In my chapter, I've ranked Paul number 20 of our all-time greats, but he was probably too good too early. And anyway, he only played about 30 Tests, I think, for Australia, and to his disappointment, to this day, he only made 2 Test centuries and went into a wonderful career in education.
Yeah, he
still 2 more than the combined 3 of us have ever done.
That's quite true. Now, John, for us who've grown up pretty traditional staple diet Australian sport, it was footy, cricket, tennis for some. But the thing I liked about the book, it highlighted a lot of, some might say, obscure sports, but for the people in them, anything but. But to have snowboarders, skiers, gymnasts from Geelong that have competed with the very, very best all around the world, that to me was the real showcase of the day. And you've found them, you've highlighted them, and you've given them the just service they deserve as great icons of our town. Yes,
there are the book cuts across 33 sports, Rob, but we've got chapters there on now, for example, a young lady, Jacinta Carroll, from Conquerors now. She's won the World Water Ski Championship 5 times, and that's an incredible performance, but you don't really hear about it. So it was pleasing to be able to write chapters on our sports stars like her.
Yeah, there's so many of them filtered through the book. And I remember as a young person, Judy Nairati, seeing her name in the Geelong Advertiser a lot. But when you actually sit back and look at the body of work that she performed, probably, you'll get me a bit times right, but probably through the 60s and 70s. Just an extraordinary career for her as well, and another great representative of the town.
Certainly, and she's a wonderful lady. Now she's 78. She lives down at Ocean Grove. Now, I knew the name Judy Nairati, but when I researched her career, she's had a fabulous career in badminton. So much so that I ranked her number 30 in the top 100, and it's pleased her no end. But it's just a privilege to be able to write about a career such as Judy's.
I think the thing that I take my hat off to you, John. I didn't grow up in Geelong, so I've only been a relatively recent arrival. I remember a book coming out, I'm trying to remember who wrote it, that was called The Brownlow, and it was really easy because, we knew who the Brownlow medalists were. There was no debating, and guess what? What's his name? Old mate Patrick Cripps can now be in the next chapter. When you're deciding on the top 100, by definition, number 101, 102, 103, no doubt you've had plenty of advice afterwards as to who missed out. How hard is it to put that together?
You wouldn't believe how many times I chopped and changed it. But look, when I started the book in 1975, which is 47 years ago, when I was a sports writer on the Melbourne Herald, look, I was fortunate to be working in a sports room of absolute stars, and but they did, and the likes of Mike Sheehan was one of them, and they really did think that Geelong was Sleepy Hollow. I don't know where Sheehan was coming from because he lived in Werribee. But anyway, I just it prickled. It was all good-natured, but it prickled me a bit that we did get branded Sleepy Hollow. So that sort of triggered it. And when I ranked my top 50 back then, it didn't occur to me, but there were only 2 women in that, Judy Nairati and Joan Beretta, who died tragically on the Barwon River in training when she was a sculler. But in those ensuing 40s, I put the book aside for 43 years while I did other things and resurrected it 4 years ago. But in those 43 years, when it was in a safe place, the whole landscape changed. Women's sport came into it. So I virtually had to relegate, I think there was 17 or 18 from my original 40, my original 50, and include the likes of Trish Fallon, Simone McInnes, Madison Brown, Tracy Gaudry, and the likes of Jacinta Carroll. So I think we've come up with a pretty balanced book about who should be in it and who shouldn't be.
There were a gentleman hopefully listening this morning, the MC for the day. If there was a chapter on ambassadors for Geelong, Ian Cover would certainly be it. We're staggered by his breadth of knowledge, the people he knows in the book. But you would have had a lot of hard decisions, but to find the right man to MC the occasion was probably an easy one for you.
Well, Ian gave me lots of advice.
There's a surprise.
Yeah, about who should be in it and who shouldn't be in it. So I ignored most of it.
Morning, Cove.
getting back to the Brownlow medalists, I was always insistent that it was not a football book, because when I was on the Herald, I covered the Olympic sports, which I loved, like swimming, cycling, athletics, and even back then, football used to dominate the sports pages, and it's even worse now. And look, I love football. My great uncle, Harold Craven, captained Geelong in the early 1920s, but I wanted to give exposure to the likes of Gail Cooper, to the likes of Jacinta Carroll, and all those other sports that don't get a good go. So when I started the book, we had 3 Brownlow medalists, and now we've got 7, which is incredible, really, for the Geelong team to have 7 Brownlow medalists.
And just for people listening to clarity, John decided that Australian rules football not being an international sport, so it was not possible to represent the region. He drew the line at Brownlow medalists, and as I mentioned, 7. But of course, John, it caused a lot of discussion because with respect to the 7 Brownlow medalists, I would have thought that in your lifetime and even further back that Graham Polly Farmer and Gary Ablett Sr. were probably the 2 most talked about and top players the club's ever produced. They're not in it, but you had to have a criteria, and I guess that's it. And it was a good criteria in the end, I reckon.
Well, thank you. Look, the greatest footballer I've ever seen is Polly Farmer, Graham Polly Farmer. And at one stage over the past 4 years, I thought, oh, maybe, I'll put the 7 Brownlow medalists in, but maybe I should have a captain's pick and include Polly. But then I thought, hell, I'm a real fan of Joel Selwood's too, and then I thought, no, I can't do that, because if I even put one in, I will open Pandora's box. But I've written as glowingly as I could about the likes of Polly and certainly Gary Ablett Sr. in other chapters. There is a chapter there on Gary Ablett Jr. and Gary Ablett Sr. gets a lot of that chapter.
Wouldn't be hard to draw a line between the 2 of them, would there? They have similar names.
That's right. That's right. You could get accidentally mixed up.
So does that mean that the next book is going to be all about Geelong footballers?
No, because I don't think I've got another 47 years.
Neither has Rob, quite clearly. In fact, he was just commenting off air about your great uncle Harold Craven, how he loved watching him play in the early 20s.
Now, John,
it was pretty good. He must have been good if they made him captain.
No, Rob said he was a really good footballer. He used to love getting down there with his children in the 20s and watching him play.
Now, John, there was one gentleman who strode into the room, and I was delighted to see. I've never met him before, but I worked with his father, a boy from Narwarri, and when you just put in context of Geelong players making it on the big stage, to be pitching for the New York Yankees in the World Series of Baseball in America, it's a bit American, but as far as the it's called the World Series, not necessarily because it's a world game, but as far as sporting events go on the calendar, it's one of the all-time greats. And here's this boy from Narwarri pitching very well. That brought it to me as how great this book is and how great the work you've done to highlight these incredible representatives of our region.
Yeah, well, thank you. Look, Mike Sheehan's interview with Graham Lloyd on Tuesday, I thought was just
it was
just fantastic. And you got this big 6'8" left giant, a left arm pitcher. You're right, farm boy from Narwarri, an absolute gentleman, one of the nicest blokes you'd ever meet. And he bowled over to America from Narwarri, from the Guild, Geelong Guild Baseball Club, and here I am, announced himself. It took him 4 or 5 years to crack it, but when he did, boy, did he crack it.
Yeah, an amazing story to to be in amongst that ilk, and still proudly wears the championship ring, which in America it means a lot, but it sits on his finger. It probably doesn't mean to a lot of Australians, but I had a chat to him afterwards, and it means an awful lot to him. And he was quite humbled by this book and the occasion. And you'd think if you ever wanted to get ahead of yourself, pitching in the World Series is probably a way to do it. But incredibly humble young fella who's very much connected, brought his mother along to the event, which just goes to show the character of the fella. And there was a lot more in the room like him. And I think that's another thing that we in Geelong can be very proud of, not only the representation, but to remain humble, grounded, good folk. And I'm sure you found that when you were doing the interviews.
Oh, just incredible. It sort of emerged very on. I mean, very early on. A lot of the top 100 that I've got there, well, 27 of them are no longer with us. 6 are incapacitated, and there's another half dozen live overseas. But as I was doing these interviews, you're right. I mean, these people, they're just so humble, and it was my privilege to be able to do this. As I got into it, I didn't realise where it'd lead to, and we'd finish up with a book 811 pages long. But as I was writing some of these chapters, and I thought, gee, I'm probably writing too much about this particular person, and I thought, blow it, it's my book. I'm gonna write it the way I want to write it. And I mean, like the chapter on John Landy went on for 20 pages, but you're looking back on that chapter, there's not one word I'd want to cut out of it.
Yes, you wouldn't have to pad much, I wouldn't have thought, with John Landy.
No. I had an extraordinary interview with John Landy in October 2019. He was desperately ill, and I went up to his bush home in out the back of Castlemaine, and I spent 2 hours with him after really only expecting to have a half an hour with him, and he told me stuff that he never disclosed to anybody else, and I'm proud to say that that chapter contains material that is just mind-blowing, really.
John, writing styles. I was talking to Peter Ryan from The Age this week about writing styles and influences, and there's been some great writers that I know you've loved and read a lot of over the years. Has your writing style changed from what you produced with the first maybe 25 chapters you did in 1977 to the way you finished the book?
What's that? Now I appreciate that question. In 1975, I wrote a handful of chapters, probably 5 or 6. And looking back, I probably wasn't a good enough writer. In fact, I know I wasn't. I wasn't a good enough writer to put together a book that we finally completed this year. It was probably a great thing, and also particularly with not the shortage of women, but the opportunities that women lacked in those days. There weren't enough women, but my writing style evolved over the years. I didn't copy anybody, but I was influenced by other writers, and there was the chief football writer on the Melbourne Herald at the time was Alf Brown, an absolute legend. He was replaced by Mike Sheehan. And Alf wrote very simply, and I didn't copy his style, but it influenced me on how just to tell the story simply. No need for too much fancy stuff. And my style evolved around 2 important factors. First of all, you've got to inform your reader. But secondly, it's important to entertain that reader. And that's where my style is finished up.
And we're desperately trying to do either on this program with little success. John, we probably need to wrap things up. There is one question that no doubt everybody listening wants the answer to. you more than anybody, you should see the look I'm getting across the desk here from Rob Cameron, you more than anybody else can comment on a batsman that used to bat for the Motowari Cricket Club. How many books of 100 superstars of sport across Geelong would you need to get through before the name Robert Bruce Cameron popped up?
Oh, he's right at the top, mate.
I flicked through the list of the 100 and was amazed that he wasn't there.
Well,
He was, actually, more correctly.
I was searching desperately for something earlier in the week in my garage, cluttered garage here, and I came across a box of old trophies. And remembered, the trophy said the 1971 Motowari Cricket Club A grade, most wickets, J. Craven. And I had totally forgotten about that, but it brought back some great memories of playing out there, and I played for 3 years cricket for Motowari, and they were just just a bunch of really great blokes, and Robbie was among them.
Certainly was. Great memories. Now, one more bit of advice is we've got to find the book. You can get it going to Caribou Publishing. Is it on a website, John?
If you just hit caribou.net.au, it'll take you straight to it. That's CARIBOU, as in reindeer.
And you'll find it in all good bookstores as well. And one bit of advice you gave us on Tuesday, I want to give to the listeners if they do grab this book. Read the foreword. You suggested to do it. It's a long foreword, but it is... Preface, sorry.
Yeah.
It is interesting. It is informative in itself, and it also highlights the writing style that you then see through the rest of the book. And I'm really pleased you gave me that advice, because like most, I would have just flicked to chapter 1 and headed on. But please, if you grab the book, read the preface first. It's well worth it. It's a wonderful book, John. You should be very proud of what you've done, and anyone in Geelong who's really connected to sport, get the book. Some sports you'll know about, others you won't, but I can guarantee each and every read is well worth it. Well done, John. Superb performance.
Well, that's wonderful, boys. Thank you very much.
Great to have you on board. John Craven, author of
The Conquerors.